transcends death. Do you understand? This worldly consciousness, as I see you, you see me, seems so familiar, so real. But in sleep, where is it gone? Where is the title? Where is the name? Where is your position? Where is everything? It's gone. But still the reality in you is there, but you don't know it. We have to know that. Why? Because that alone transcends death. How can you know what is coming after death unless you know that? Not after death, but right now, while you are awake and conscious of your existence. We have to make it dynamic to our consciousness. And so, if we are conscious of that in this life, we will be conscious of it, aware of it, and awake in it after death. If not, you will not know much about after death. As the Master used to say, when one dies, as the great cosmic force, life force in the body goes up through the spine and out through the thousand-rayed lotus and the top of the head and out and merges in the great presence of God. When that happens, it enlivens all the little films in the subconscious mind, and your whole life is spread before you. And then, if you're conscious, have made that eternal light of God your own during this life, there'll be no break in continuity of consciousness. If you've lived an undesirable life, you'll have to see it all. But if you have made your consciousness dynamic to the eternal part of you, the light and presence of God, you will slip through that into the great light and that subconscious flare which happens at that time. That subconscious revelation of all you have done during this life cannot affect you because you realize that it is a play, because you are one with the great light of God. So that's the whole thing in overcoming death, is to be familiar with that part of you, the eternal part of you, which always was and always will be, which never had a birth. It is this waking consciousness that has had the birth. It must therefore die. Who wants to be tied up with something that's going to pass away? It has its laws, attractions, material things are all right, but there comes a time when you realize in the end you have nothing. So if you want to have something after you're through with this play, know the eternal part of you that always was, always will be. Be one with God who resides right in you. Now going on just a little bit here. If we are to know about after death, we have to know about it while still here in this existence. That is the important thing. In other words, we have to be able to die consciously. That's all. That is to know that you are passing above this body into the reality which is within you. You have to learn to die consciously, that's all. Now in sleep, ordinarily we sleep unconsciously. There is quite some relaxation in sleep, but it's in an unconscious way. In sleep, the voluntary nerves are controlled unconsciously, automatically in sleep, but there is a way whereby you can control the voluntary nerves in a conscious way, and that is through right meditation of self-realization fellowship. Then what do? Instead of sleeping in an unconscious way, as we say, dead to the world, you'll be conscious that you are asleep. And you'll have that a greater relaxation in conscious sleep, which comes by the proper meditations of techniques of self-realization fellowship. You'll have a greater relaxation in conscious sleep than you will in automatic sleep or unconscious sleep. So that's the first step in learning how to die consciously. Doesn't that seem terrible, to die consciously? It's only terrible because you don't know it, that's all. When you have the knowledge of what death is, there'll be nothing to it, because you will, as St. Paul did, die daily in a conscious way. And doing that, you will see the other side in a conscious way. If you do not do it, how can you expect to know something which you do not know when death comes? That's why those people who put all their trust and dependence on material things That's why when death comes they have nothing. How can they have anything? Their trust and security was in matter, in material things, in changeable consciousness. How can they have anything when that changeable consciousness is swept away? But those humble people and devotees who realize the first and greatest necessity is to know God and put their faith in Him, when that outward consciousness is swept away, they have the reality, the presence of God within them. So, after death, what? Whatever you want to make it. So as I have said, we must learn to die in a conscious way. I gave the illustration of sleep, and meditation, wherein we control the voluntary nerves. Now, when the voluntary nerves are refreshed, we wake up naturally. But how about those involuntary nerves within us, which control all the vital functions of our body? We never give them rest. Why? Because we don't know how, that's all. And so there comes a time when they get pretty tired. What happens? Death. Death comes. Now, if we can consciously put the involuntary nerves to sleep, which happens when death comes, if we can do it in a conscious way, don't you see that you can then practice conscious death, knowing what it is to die consciously. As Larry Marshall lived, people came to see him. He sat there without heartbeat, without breath, fully alive, fully conscious in death. That's the only way to attain immortality. So if you want to know and experience immortality, learn how to die consciously. It isn't difficult, but it does take a little effort. And it takes the proper effort given by one as the beloved Master who kept and knew and held the keys of life and death in his hand. You can do it once. Once you sit in meditation, the heart slows down, the breath slows down, and you realize that you can live without breath. There you have immortality right there. Now to go on a little deeper and fully control the involuntary nerves, then you will realize this body is nothing. The reality is yours, is the presence of God within you, His great cosmic energy, His great omniscience, His love. That's the reality. But as long as we are tied and attracted to outward consciousness, that is all we know. When that is swept aside, there is a break in the continuity of consciousness, and naturally we pass into unconsciousness. So remember, to know what is coming after death, we have to make that eternal consciousness within us